Next up in our Big 12 preview is one of the new Big 12 teams. That is the Arizona State Sun Devils. Dalton, they really went through a tumultuous 2022. They fired their head coach, Herm Edwards, after numerous recruiting violations. Kind of hit the reset button by hiring Kenny Dillingham, the Oregon offensive coordinator. Same record as the year before, though. They went 3-9 for the second straight seasons. They really struggled mightily on both sides of the ball. They were the second lowest graded team overall in the Power 5. They must replace many key players from last year's team, and they play the hardest schedule in the conference, according to our power rankings. So it's a lot to be pessimistic on for Arizona State right now. But what is the biggest strength for the Sun Devils team?
Yeah, there's a lot working against them, but one thing working for them in theory should be the run game. That they bring back Cam Skattebo, who really was the engine of their offense last year. I think gained a lot of notoriety in the USC game, even at times playing a wildcat quarterback and slinging the ball around a little bit. So just one of those guys, a really, really good football player. I think at times even reminds me a little bit of like a Toby Gerhart kind of guy, but maybe a little more versatile than that. And then look, their transfer quarterback from Michigan State, Sam Leavitt, played limited time last year for the Spartans, but an 85.8 rushing grade that should complement Skattebo well. So if they can get this run game going, I know we've said that for about every team in the Big 12, but I think this is another case where it's like that is the best part of this team, and that's what they're going to ride to try to find any success.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest weakness is kind of a generic one, but it's like they lost many key players from what already was a bad team last year, right? Of their 8 most valuable players, according to our wins above average metric, they only brought one of them back, and that is Cam Skattebo, that you just mentioned before. And they really didn't add too many impact players in the transfer portal either, which, again, creates a lot of pessimism over whether or not they can, take a step forward in 2024. But one of the transfers they did bring in, Dalton, was that quarterback, Sam Leavitt, coming in from Michigan State. What should we know about him as he heads into his first year as Arizona State's starting quarterback?
He's got a pedigree, right? I mean, he's the younger brother of NFL safety Dalton Leavitt, who was with the Packers. I'm not sure if he's still there, if he's re-signed yet, but 4-star recruit, younger brother of an NFL safety. And I think what you can see is tools, right? The two things, he didn't play a lot last year, but 45, 50 snaps. He's got a really strong arm, and he's mobile, right? Again, an 85.8 rushing grade. You can see the arm strength. He's rumored to run about a 4.6. That's pretty legit. You can see that. He's got open field vision. He can really, I think, again, the running is going to be the base of this with Skattebo. The delivery reminds me actually a little bit of Zach Wilson, where the footwork can be a little inconsistent. He's got a really strong arm, but it's not necessarily a delivery that calls for elite ball placement, where it's like it's kind of a strike zone thrower, right? Where it's like he's going to get it in the area, but not perfectly. So the accuracy, again, small sample. Maybe I'm judging his accuracy too soon. That's what it looks like to me, where it's kind of that same Zach Wilson kind of throwing motion, but definitely got tools. He's got a strong arm. He's got good feet. And if there's a sophomore that you're trying to build up and have a long-term project with here, he's got enough tools to do it with. They just have to find a way to execute around him.
Yeah. I think the one guy he could really rely on in that offense is obviously Cam Skattebo, we mentioned a couple times already. He transferred over from Sacramento, was fantastic at Sacramento, had 90-plus grades both in 2021 and 2022, made the jump to the FBS, made the jump to the Power 5, and was really one of the lone bright spots for Arizona State offensively last year. Had a forced missed tackle on 34% of his attempts, which was good for 7th in the Power 5 last year. Also forced 12 missed tackles on catches, which was 5th in the Power 5 as well. 286 receiving yards, tied for 9th in the Power 5. He loves contact at 5'10", 225 pounds, and simply refuses to go down, man. That game against USC, he carried Arizona State on his back in that game and really led them almost to a win over Caleb Williams and the Trojans in that game. And if you didn't know going into that game, you would have thought Cam Skattebo was the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, not Caleb Williams, based off how dominant Cam Skattebo was in the game. So I'm a huge fan of him, and I think he's, in what is a loaded running back conference, he's certainly one of the more underrated ones we have in the Big 12 right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he's the centerpiece, right? And you talk about a team who they need that centerpiece on offense for, to cover for what's probably going to be a struggling defense. But I think one guy to highlight on this defense is somebody that transferring in from a really good defense in Louisville, and that's defensive tackle Jeff Clark, man. Really good rotational player on a deep defensive line at Louisville. And you're talking about a 77.5 overall grade. That was a top 50 mark in the country. Really, really good run defender. Another team that if they're going to run the ball and they're going to stop the run. I think it starts with a guy like Jeff Clark on the inside. And even then, he was top 5 in the ACC among interior players in pass rush win rate and pressure rate. So, that's a good foundational piece. Obviously, they need more around him, but to go and get a guy from a really, really good Louisville defense like that to be the center of their defensive line is a good move.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dalton, it's been back-to-back 3-9 seasons for Arizona State. Now they move over to the Big 12. What are you expecting out of Kenny Dillingham in his second year as Arizona State's head coach?
This is a tall task with where this program is at right now, right? To get this team even back into bowl contention. Like, Skattebo's really good, but I mean, you've got a young quarterback who's barely played. You got pieces that they've lost, right? You lose BJ Green, who he goes to Colorado. He's probably the best pass rusher in the Big 12, and you lose him to a conference rival. You lose a guy like Jalen Conyers, right, at tight end, who could have been a really big help for a kid like Sam Leavitt, right? So it's tough. I mean, the one thing I do like about this team, even in the losing efforts, they compete really, really hard, man. You mentioned the USC game. They were really, I believe they only lost to Washington. Was it 15-7? Somewhere in there, or 22-7. It was a really tight game. They gave Washington a lot of fits. I think Dillingham knows how to game plan. I think he knows how to get his team ready to play games. But the lack of talent is an obvious issue. There's an argument that this is the least talented team in the Big 12, and that's a huge barrier when you're talking about some of the premier guys that play in this conference.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they lost by 12 to Oklahoma State. They lost by 14 to USC. They lost by 3 to Cal. They lost by 3 to Colorado. They lost by 8 to Washington. They really were. They lost by and they really were in a lot of games, man, last year, right? So 3-9 is not good, but like they were in some games with some really good. Like, they lost by a single possession to a team who made it all the way to the national title game last year, and they held that Washington offense to 15 points. Like, that's insane. That's
and not even that. That game, I believe, was, I want to say 9-7, maybe. It was actually a pick 6 that separated Washington. They held Washington to like 9 or 10 points, something like that.
Insane. Yeah, it looked like a Big Ten West game out there. And you have one of the most prolific offenses we've seen in college football in recent memory. And you held them to what, 8 points, right? So, yeah, I was really impressed by that. So, yeah, I think there is something to be said about that. Yeah, 3-9, but yeah, they were competing, man. That's a great point by you that they really were last year. They lose Elijah Badger, too, their top receiver last year. He won over to Florida. It's another big loss. And, yeah, man, it's just the fact that, I just don't think they're going to make too much of a step forward considering the losses they had this offseason, also combined with the fact they have, like I said, a young quarterback and the hardest schedule in the Big 12 as well. It's tough for me to really see Arizona State making it too big of a step forward. I mean, they play Kansas, they play Utah, they play Oklahoma State, they play UCF, they play Kansas State, and they play Arizona, right? So as they play almost every great team in the Big 12 right now. So I think better than 3-9 is possible. I think they could be a 4 or 5 win team next year, but I don't think they're going to make a bowl game next year, if that's what you're asking me right now. But that's what we got for our preview of the Arizona State Sun Devils. Hey, thanks for watching the PFF College Football Show. Before I let you go, though, we have an unbelievable deal for you guys right now. If you use the code CFB25, you get 25% off your PFF Plus annual subscription. We've got the 2024 College Football Preview Guide that you can find over at pff.com, featuring the best players in the country from all 70 Power 5 teams, plus 10 Group of 5 teams that have the best chance at making the college football playoff as well. You can also gain access to NCAA premium stats for historical games, teams, and player tracking dating all the way back to 2014, so the last decade or so of college football. All the stats you can hope for, you can find in PFF Premium as well. Also, you can be the GM of your favorite NFL team with our unbelievable mock draft simulator where you can draft up to 7 rounds of players for your NFL team. And if you want to dominate your fantasy league, you can do that as well using the best fantasy tools on the planet. All of that and more with your PFF Plus annual subscription, which you can find for 25% off right now with the code you can find in the description. Or if you want to go to subscribe.pff.com and use the code CFB25 at checkout. Again, you get 25% off your PFF Plus subscription. This won't last forever, so make sure you take advantage of it right now.